Alrighty, well, welcome back to.
Well, no. You already messed it up. Welcome to the first ever episode of the Screen Love Affair podcast. There you go. I did my part.
Formerly known as
Totally,
Talkies.
totally different. Yeah, exactly. Totally
Yeah.
unique and different identity.
Well,
Otherwise
anyways,
known as slap.
slap
Did you
this.
see the hashtag, by the way, that I included in
I
the
did.
post? I
I
did
loved
that
that little bit.
exclusively for you, so
It
I'm
made my
sure we
day.
can get
So
some slap merch as the years trug on. I thought about doing a bit where I had the Talkie shirt on and I did like a like to reveal the Screen Love Affair one, but I'm like, that's a good shirt, and now it's an antique, so like I'm not gonna just
yeah,
rip it for a
it's
bit.
rare.
That yeah, I'm holding on to that bad boy. So,
It's a
but yeah, I know we're
legacy
recording
merch.
right near Canada Day.
Oh yeah, Canada Day, don't you know?
Oh
I
yeah,
didn't
we're
get
all
the memo.
hosers here.
I didn't
Yeah,
get the memo.
we didn't
about...
coordinate. It was just
Yeah,
well,
yeah.
technically as Canada Day as Tim Hortons is, I guess, right?
Well, there's a Canadian, maple leaf right here. Maybe I'll do this for the episode. Really lend some credibility to this newly founded podcast.
You
But,
should wear this exact outfit to an episode we do about like a serious like female-led movie, or like if you looked like this when we talked about Sinners,
Yeah.
that would have been that would have been money, I think.
Yeah, I thought like coincidentally too, because 28 years later is about a whole nation coming to succumbing to a virus. I was going to be like, how well do you think Canada would do? And obviously, it would not do well at all. In fact, all of the Americas would probably go down. Those movies only really work because they are on the island of was it like Britain and the UK or quarantined off. But that was my only real Canada Day adjacent bit. But yeah, we're talking about 28 years later, the third movie of the trilogy of the 28 franchise, not including 28 Days. That's some people really confuse that movie. There's 28 Days and 28 Days Later. Just got to clarify that in case.
There's a movie called 28 Days.
Isn't it a rom-com? I think I
It's-
saw this meme
Oh my
in
god,
meme
I haven't
form.
seen that.
Like
Yeah,
it's like
yeah.
a Sandra Bullock like
It's like she has to like get a guy or lose a guy in 28 days, and then this movie,
Yeah, it's a
this
2000
franchise.
American comedy drama
Yep, a dramedy.
with Sandra Bullock. Oh, there you go.
a
28 days.
dramedy, maybe?
Yeah, a dramedy.
Also
yeah, so-
confused with friggin' Steven was what I was trying to explain, because we went to see this. I saw this a second time before we recorded. And Steven was like, "Is that the vampire one in the Arctic?" And I'm like, "What?" Like I thought he was
28
crazy,
days
and
a night,
that's
or 30 days
it's
a night.
30
yeah.
days a night. Yeah. So I was like, deep cut for him on that one. But yeah, I
Yeah,
totally had
yeah.
forgotten about that movie.
I went to the Arctic this time last year. No, that's a lie. I went to the Arctic last year sometime, and everyone's like, "Oh, is it like where they have 30 days of night?" And they only know it from that vampire movie that brought like Arctic darkness awareness to the rest of the world. But they do have like basically a month of nonstop darkness, and then a month of sun's always up. So it's kind of wild. I was filming a show called it was called Untitled Arctic Comedy, which later became North of North. You can find it on Netflix and Apple TV. But basically, it's like corner gas, very Canadian show, taking place in the Arctic. And it's funny because you'll see them go to like a house party in the middle of the night, and it's broad daylight, and you're like, "Is that a continuity error?" You're like, "Oh no, actually, when you film in June, which is when this is taking place, it's day is night, not day for night. Day is just night." So yeah, it's you see people playing at the playground like 3 a.m. It's a fever dream. So.
I think Insomnia was the first time I was like, "Oh,
Yeah.
the Robin
Yeah.
Williams version, not the original." But anyway, we're here in the Screen Love Affair podcast to talk about 28 years later. I want to start this off by saying that we went to see, we had a few movies on our list, and this was easily the bottom of my list going in, just in terms of anticipation and legacy sequels and all of this. And I did rewatch the first one beforehand, which is phenomenal. I thought that was great too. But this was next level for me, and went from the bottom of my list to my favorite of all those ones that I watched. And obviously, who knows how the rest of the year will shake out and with time, but might be my favorite movie of the year so far.
Wow, that's a bold claim. I knew you
Yeah.
liked it a lot. I didn't know you loved it a lot. But
I don't know if I would if I could make a, favorite of the year so far, but just when you mentioned that, it hit me that like this year has been kind of like mid for movies so far. Like we're
whoa,
halfway
I
through
thought
the
you were going to say stacked.
No.
No, I mean like we're halfway through the year, and I like can hardly think of like 5 movies that like really blew me away.
Materialist.
Well, but on that
Sinners? I don't
note,
know.
if I looked at my letterbox just to refresh me because I thought, I'm like, this might be my favorite of the year so far. And there's been a lot of fine movies, a lot of
Yeah.
decent movies, but there has been nothing that is really, other than Sinners and this, in at least in my experience, that have really cracked that next level of like, I really love this. So yeah, I agree 1,000%. Like decent, okay stuff, but nothing that really took me to the next level and really dug me up. So
Yeah. Anyway, back
Wow.
to
Well, I
28.
disagree, but yeah, let's jump off that topic.
Yeah,
Um,
that's a
you mean
not
the
to
you?
derail
Sorry, you guys mean the monkey didn't crack your top
well, wait,
100
what do
of
you
all
No.
think
time?
was like so great? What do you think was so great this
I
year?
don't know. Sinners was so great. I saw that twice.
Yeah,
I think I've
one.
seen twice. Okay,
Sinners,
one.
yeah, it's up there.
Yeah.
Materialist, two.
No.
I
Let's
wasn't
move on
prepared
to
for
the-
this argument today, but
Well, you came out so strongly against
yeah.
it. I was like, well, he must have a bunch of movies that he loves
I
then.
need
no,
to,
there
like,
was like
double check.
3 other. Yeah. Honestly, I'm just gonna be a great podcast host.
You
and
guys
say,
all
so
look
what'd
up
you
on
guys
your
think? And then I'm
letterbox.
just gonna do this for 5 minutes.
Well, while you guys double check that, I'll just say for my version of the spoiler free thoughts, I've written my review. You guys can check that out as well. That's always kind of spoiler free, and I'll give a little bit more detail there than I will here. But yeah, like I couldn't believe I talk a lot about how visual style makes such a difference, and this movie just like it feels so different and so consistently that
yeah.
it really felt refreshing that way. And then just as the story was progressing and as the movie was going, I just found myself more and more invested. And then absolutely, like again, zero spoilers at this point, but blown away by the emotionality of the ending well, not the very end. We'll also get into that. But like to the point where like once the first time I was really surprised by that, the second time got me like I cried. I welled up. Just kind of being, I think, mentally a little bit more prepared for that. Like I feel like I just wasn't expecting that for this movie. And it just enhanced all of the feelings I had from the first experience. So yeah, like blown away by it. That's my high level stuff. I don't know which one of you guys want to dive into it next, but
I usually do, but I want to let Adriana take this part. I feel like I
Sure,
would
yeah,
follow
yeah.
up with other things. I think I can. I'm marinating some of my takes here.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, so for me, I went in with like no expectations. Like I didn't really, not that I thought it would be bad, but I just was like, it'll probably be fine. um, for like, a legacy sequel of a horror franchise that was pretty much dead, just thought nothing of it. Like there's no way this will be exceptional. And it just kind of blew my expectations out of the water. Yeah, not to just sound like I'm copying Shay's answer on a test, but like I was surprised at how emotional it was, how weird it was. Like I really loved how strange and like bizarre a story this was for like a horror movie. I thought the gore and the creep factor was there, even though it probably wasn't the scariest horror movie. It I don't know, it was just very, very effective. And the technical stuff, again, blown away when I found out it was shot on mostly on iPhones. Like, you could definitely tell, um, there's like this low res, lo-fi quality to some of the shots, especially, but it has such an interesting, unique visual effect that it just works. And yeah, I don't know. I just really loved it. Enjoyed the experience from top to bottom.
To
And I'm super pumped for the next one now, which is not something I thought I would say before
Yeah.
seeing it. So,
Well, it's funny you framed it with the expectations because I feel like that's like the E word on the channel. Like, Shay's always like, "Oh, Brandon, your expectations." But I think my letterbox review for this was I had high expectations for it. I couldn't tell you what they were. I just wanted it to be a very impactful, very groundbreaking movie because I think the first one basically revitalized the zombie genre as a whole. Like the fast zombie, the infected. I know we all kind of grew up in a Walking Dead haze where zombies and Zombieland and
Fucking hated The Walking Dead from day
Yeah.
one, dude. I was an OG
Yeah.
hater.
like the movie or sorry, the video game like Left 4 Dead and was it Dead Rising, the one about the guy at the mall, like, and
yeah.
then obviously I think the first movie came out and then the Dawn of the Dead remake with Zack Snyder came out just after, which was also another fast zombie Americana mall experience. I think those two movies kind of go hand in hand to be like the Mac Daddy of the modern zombie that took over the zeitgeist for about 10 to 15 years before we all had zombie fatigue, probably because of The Walking Dead. But my expectations were high because I was like, they're not bringing this back for no reason. When we were going on earlier about what great movies.
Such an ambitious way to look at it. I'm impressed.
Well, we were going on about great movies earlier and how this year is so mid to you guys. One movie that will cracks my top 5 of the year and maybe will be my top 10 for sure almost was Final Destination Bloodlines. Why bring back a 20-year-old dead franchise if you're not going to do something fun with it? And I think that movie came back and it came back with the tropes recognized and they doubled down. Where this movie, when I expected it to do that and I expected it to like, have the zombies evolve in a more like, again, Left 4 Dead way where you had like the special type zombies, this movie kind of pivoted into a more emotional beat, which I'm not going to lie, I could have done without, but I'm glad they went that way. I think it landed really well, surprisingly. Like I didn't know what to expect, but I knew this had to be good. This was the top of my list to view this year or like this week. So I'm really glad that Shay, the one that said he was least interested because it was just going to be maybe a cash grab for a franchise to reboot, kind of had the inverse where, you went in rock bottom expectations, walks out great. I went in thinking this has to be masterful. And I was thoroughly surprised. I think I just said like met all my expectations, which is a really hard thing to say in today's landscape. So, unfortunately, to our listeners, we're just all going to agree with each other for the next 45 minutes.
Well, I already have a bone to pick with your bit, so I don't think that's true. Okay? You said you could have gone without the emotional beat. Is that what you're?
Yeah. Because I went in kind of hoping. Yeah, I went in kind of hoping the movie. With Kraven the Hunter hunting zombies was going to be really balls to the wall and fun. And then they bring in a dying, cancer-ridden Alzheimer's mother. Why did no, I'm kidding. It was very strong. The story pulled it off, but 180 for me. On a sidebar, friend of the podcast, my girlfriend, this material related to her a lot. Like she had lost her mom at a young age from cancer. And when we went in thinking this is going to be a zombie gore fest, and somewhere, around like end of the first act or beginning of the second act kind of thing, you're like, oh no, and by the finale, when he hands the movie's been out now, hands the kid the wet skull of his freshly, boiled alive corpulent mother to put on top of the memento mori, just diving straight off the deep end here. I was kind of like, that's cool and all, but I kept thinking like, oh my God, my girlfriend who was like, oh, let's go see that horror movie, was like, oh, this one was way closer to home than I thought, like coming to terms with, slowly losing a loved one. So, that's my only thing I said could have done without. I think it was really strong. And again, the themes were really reinforced. Like it was tasteful. But when I said it like that crash in kind of way of like, it pivots into a very somber story about like the value of life. And I guess that's how you elevate a franchise that was reinventing the zombie movie, into a tale that's a little bit more personal, because what else can you do after 20 years of like zombie media zeitgeist? So I think they did it well, but I guess my one expectation was that it was going to be a lot more action heavy, but I definitely got that. Like that opening act, when they're going on and off the island, I had like heart palpitations. I was super into
Oh
that.
yeah.
So yeah, I really am saying it kind of clickbaity. I'm glad they did it, but I also like would be lying if I said I wasn't a little bit like, oh, it's about a dying mother with cancer. That's so real. I thought I was going to escape to the movies about,
Well, but
seeing a
see,
zombie
okay,
chase.
so this is where you and I are gonna tussle a little bit, because the E word, as you said, expectations, that is permeated throughout a whole different titled podcast, and now kicking off the new one. I feel like the difference between me and you when we go into these things is I only think like, oh, I think this might be bad. I don't have an idea of I expect this movie to be like action heavy zombie fest or whatever. Like I dodge marketing as much as I can, so like I totally get why like like trailers can shape a particular vision. But I felt like I had seen the I'm assuming it was a teaser trailer. I haven't watched them afterwards, but for this movie a bunch of times now ahead of other movies, but it was very much just that, like a teaser. It was really eerie with that boots, well, it's
Yeah,
like
the
a song, but
poem.
the
Yeah.
audio over it is really like eerie, and so it just kind of set a vibe, and then that like was it for me. But yeah, like I think the difference being, if you like, if someone is going in expecting, I think maybe you were memeing a little bit, but like an action heavy kind of like going through the woods hunting and whatever, and that's at the beginning. I guess we're in the spoilers now. That's the kind of very beginning of the movie. I can see where that rest can creep up, and like obviously if it's a personal connection, like I guess I like, obviously how you take it is how you take it, but for me, like I guess it's no secret, I don't need to be weird about it, but like my mom battled cancer last year. We're hoping to get good news actually in the next couple weeks here on that front, more. But like I think maybe that's why it just kind of hit maybe a little bit harder, was that in that same vein of like I wasn't expecting it, and I'm like, oh wow, like this is working. And then when I was kind of just like ready and I knew it was coming, it just landed, I think, that much harder, and I think I was more attentive to it. And it just like got me, and I think like that for me is why like I like, it's the thing I love about movies, that it can draw in. And like in this one specifically, and then I'll pass it off, but and I gave Ray Fiennes so much credit in this role for this, because on paper, I do not think that this scene, as written, as shown, as filmed, would work without that performance. Because like you said, it's this like him handing the skull of his mother, him
Oh yeah.
backing off and like shooting the dart at him and walking off. Like with the wrong
Yeah.
actor, with the wrong performance, like this would feel off, and it's super weird in the sense that it's like, here's your mother's skull, like, but in the moment in the movie, it never felt that way for me. It
No.
worked like purely emotionally, and that's like, to me, is such a feat, because it is so weird and abstract and is not like a normal thing that people do. And for it to land so significantly, again, to me, is a testament just of all of these pieces coming together to work absolutely perfectly. And yeah, like makes the movie for me. Like it really is what levels this up from like a solid movie to like a fantastic movie, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think it's a testament to the world building. Like, it's so effective. Like, we're locked into this one setting for most of it, right? We get this island community. We kind of know the context of what happened with the virus, how, Britain's basically been quarantined, the rest of the world has sort of moved on. But then we're in the world of these characters, and it is otherworldly, right? So that's what makes the Swedish like soldier guy's interruptions so effective. Is it's just this like striking interruption of the real world, the modern
Yeah.
world, coming into this setting, that this bubble that we've been living in for the duration of the story up to that point. And
I think
then
we talked about that. I think it's important to mention like that this movie shows the rest of the world continued on without the UK basically. Like they just let it
yeah,
fall to the
yeah,
wayside.
I mentioned that. Yeah,
Yeah, and but I think my favorite part of that definitely is the soldier when he pulls out like his fiance and she's got like the Botox to death. Like that joke cracked up the entire theater. And I even had my first thought, I was like, oh, those are some nice cell phones for the rest of the world stopped. And then I think the next line was like, yeah, no, this island's just fucked. Like as soon as you land here, you're dead. Like we don't let you back on the boat. So
yeah,
yeah, I just want to say that contemporary beat I think was really necessary because it brought the pacing and like the levity up a little bit because otherwise the movie's like really heavy. It's like a
yeah,
father's expectations and a mother dying, like, and somewhere in the middle it's like a little bit of an action adventure with that guy being like the comic relief, which is really rare in this movie. So I just want to touch on that for a
yeah. No,
moment.
I thought that bit was so good, and the movie in general is so good at like those disruptions, like of expectation, of tone, of, you know, like these shifts that we can talk about the ending too in that
Mm-hmm.
sense. But yeah, just to go back to the world building thing, I think like the bone temple, like all of that is so strange and bizarre. And Ray Fiennes' entrance too, just covered in iodine. He's like orange, and you're like, who the fuck is this? But he brings such like presence to the
Mm-hmm.
role that you're immediately like on board, and you know who this guy is. You know what this world is. The feeling it evokes is there. Like it's so evocative without a heavy hand, in like these subtle ways. It doesn't hold the audience's hand. It doesn't tell you everything that's going on. You're sort of in it with the characters and kind of figuring things out as you go, which I really really loved.
Well, especially too with the father who finally tells the son about like how they met the mad or they saw the mad doctor in the woods or whatever. Like the older guy, and says they saw him over a field of corpses just waving jovially. It's just like that's horrifying. And in those flashbacks, it is terrifying. And then when you see him, he's like, "Oh, good, you finally asked about my bone temple. Come this way," like or my memento mori. And I swear there's at least two douchebags in my theater that probably had that as a tattoo somewhere on their thigh or collarbone. That was like, "Oh, that's me, bro. Life's precious, bro." I've had a terrible theater going experience week, by the way. But yeah,
You
so
say that while you're dressed like a guy that would have such a tattoo.
I'm watching my webcam being like, that was a spot on impression. As I'm like, but yeah, not to derail, but yeah, I think, yeah, you're totally right. It doesn't hold your hand that much at all. And even like the reintroduction world building, like if we're going to pick the movie apart, starting in that first act, where only my girlfriend pointed this out to me, which I thought was funny that I went right over my head. But it was a little bit about like toxic masculinity in a way, and about like having good role models, where the dad is pushing his son to be a certain type of like man, and he doesn't display. And also like the crux of the film, when it's so obvious his mom was dying of some sort of brain cancer or something, and she's like, I just thought somebody else would tell you, and it's just showing that the dad can't emote or talk about his feelings, and that's why they went on this whole quest. It was his lack of a father figure, no matter how present and much of like a good trad dad he was, where he was like taking him hunting, showing interest, like building him up, talking. He was still not a great dad because he couldn't have that real talk and be an emotionally available guy. Meanwhile, Ray Fiennes, even though he's seen as the mad character by the mainland or the island people, he ends up being a very progressive father figure that is a little bit more about teaching a lesson and nurturing a different part of like the development process for a young man. So this is my girlfriend's take. I was a little lost on it at first, but it made a lot of sense. And yeah, I do love like how the dad is a product of growing up in this zombie environment. He's kind of this, again, like a trad dad, and he's a bit of an asshole, but he loves like the thrill of going to the mainland and hunting and bigging up his son. And yeah, I'm excited to see where Aaron Taylor Johnson's character goes, hopefully in the sequels, because I really dug kind of what they started in that first act that felt like the follow-up movie of 28 years later. Because yeah, maybe if I was trying to insult the movie, which I did, and I did really like, I did feel like near the end of it, it became a little bit more of a slice of life lesson about like general acceptance of like, you know, life and loss, and that's really good. Don't get me wrong, but I felt like this world's really big, and I like how they opened the bigness back up in that first act, but then it narrowed its focus down on the more personal story in the end of it. And I would love to go back to that big island where they had the creepy masks and the ceremony and like the very like a yacht club kind of aesthetic or whatever. Like I was really into that island, and I'm excited to see where they go with it. But yeah,
I had a couple things with that I would push back a little on. Like Aaron Taylor Johnson's character in this, like I'm on a real heater for him lately. I've really liked him, and like certainly in Nosferatu and this are the last two things
Kraven
that I
the
can
Hunter.
remember. Did not watch. But like I've read a lot actually about his character in this, and there's been a lot of takes that I felt really like, at least in my interpretation, that like dismiss him like as a shitty dad or this and that, and I'm like, I think that's a simplistic view in the sense that like who has the perfect dad, who is the perfect dad, and like yes, like he does things that like are not great, but for all intents and purposes, for a lot of it, like, you know, he is a really solid dad, and like all of those scenes at the beginning, like I thought made him such a likable character. And then when you have that moment of kind of that betrayal and realization with his son, like I felt hurt by that. I'm like, oh, like
oh
because
yeah,
it's like,
yeah.
fuck, man, like it wasn't like an anger in that sense, like it was a hurt that I feel like, and that's like, it's kind of a thin difference, but like it impactfully, it's not as just like caricature, like, he was just like, it was all a front and a show, he's actually an asshole. Like, no, he's a flawed guy in a, you know, incredibly fucked up world and everything else too. And, you know, like even that moment where like, you know, your son pulls the fucking knife on you and like he takes it, and like you can see it in the way, again, the way this is shot, and it's part of like the cam, and he's shaking, and then he opens the hand up to like just let him take it back and leave. Like, again, like it's like I thought that was such a nuanced character that I actually really like, and like you, I'm excited to see how that will play in the next one, because like, yeah, he obviously goes away for a bit. And my only other thing with what you said there was that I really see this movie, I think, more cohesively than maybe you do, and in the sense of like uh everything flowed. Like even when there was tonal shifts, it all felt like the same thing and an extension of everything that came before. Like even that a section, was his name Eric, right? Was the
Yeah.
soldier, the NATO soldier guy, when he comes in from pretty much like after the initial like, you know, shooting and explosion of him being there, but even leading up to that bit when it's the hell gas station and it
Yeah.
says like happy eater like on
Yeah,
the gas
yeah.
station, like that kicks off this kind of, you know, a, you know, 15-minute or whatever it is section of the movie that is really funny. Like there's a lot of like beats there that laugh and give us like a reprieve, but it didn't feel like a wild shift or a complete departure. And I think that's really comes down to, I think I said this in my review, probably my favorite Alex Garland script since Ex Machina, because I feel like, again, the way that like they find the humor is in those bits of like this kid who doesn't have any kind of like conventional social awareness being like, why does she look like this, and like playing off like modern real things that like we all make jokes and bits about, but at the same time, like he's just like, it just worked and it was organic. And so even when we have that kind of segue through and you know, into the emotional bit, like it all felt like part of the same movie. Where I will say the movie takes a sudden sharp turn is that very end, but we'll get to that after, because I feel like that'll be a whole subsection on itself. I don't know if you guys have anything to say about any of those points.
Uh, yeah, I was just gonna say I definitely have a few things to the cohesion element. I definitely see it very cohesively. Like I watched the other two movies leading up to this one, and in a weird way, like everything down to the cinematography that I know Adriana was mentioning earlier was, you know, like it was shot on the essentially the best consumer grade recording gear at the time, and ours is now the iPhone. And again, I love the meme of like shot on iPhone, because when you see it, there's like $40,000 of lens.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, it's a hot take, at least in the group I saw this with. I saw this on a double date last week, and yeah, the group I was with was like, yeah, the movie shot so weird. I don't know if I liked it. And I was like, this was one of the most like engagingly and interestingly shot movies I've seen in a long time. Because again, I feel bad because this is regurgitating every meme I've seen. But for those who are not chronically online like me, yeah, it was just like so many of the camera angles they could only get with an iPhone with like a giant, you know, battery pack on it or whatever. Like they do so many creative shots, split diopter shots. They do stuff where there's like refractions and little, you know, chromatic aberrations, stuff like that. And like it really, it made me realize I was watching a movie. Like it pulled me out a little bit in that sense. But going, this is so good. This is a really well shot movie. Only because I'm a nerd for that. But then in retrospect, looking back, watching the first movie, I didn't realize how like well shot it was. Like there are so many haunting shots of landscapes, and there's also really well edited scenes where like Cillian Murphy in the first movie's taking a nap in his childhood home, and he starts watching a VHS of his childhood memories. And then it's a POV shot of a zombie running through the window on the TV, and a zombie runs through the window. And I was like, holy shit, like, I forgot that was in there. I just thought zombie movie, go fast, shoot, run, you know what I mean? But rewatching that first movie, it was so much more, I don't know, like meditative, I guess, like very contemplative. And same with this one. I think it's very consistent. And the visual language it uses with the shot on iPhone, engaging cinematography combined with, again, I think even the pacing, because I think the other movies, again, the opening pacing is so fast, and like you're living in a horror movie with that opening 30 minutes of both the other two movies. And somewhere in the middle, it does become a bit more of a character surviving in this world. And what does that mean? And the finale is always kind of wrapped up on the other one in a little bit more of a blockbuster way of like, oh, they got the kid to the helicopter zone, or, you know, they made it to a safe island. And in this one, it's really the opposite. It opens the door being like, he's rejected the safe island. He's rejected a cure. That baby just feels like a Hail Mary for the next entry. You know what I mean? As far as like, will the zombie baby that's, you know, protected by the placenta lead into a cure the same way, you know, in the end of 28 weeks later, they hint at like the family bloodline maybe being the carrying gene that allows you to have the virus and spread it, but not be affected by it. Like, you know, a lot of stuff in there. But yeah, I just it got so sidetracked talking about how awesome and connective it is. I wanted to say,
No, it's good.
When
It's good.
for all the Kyles in the audience, when you talked about that knife scene where Aaron Taylor Johnson, and again, I think he is nuanced. So is Ray Fiennes. I'm saying like, oh, Ray Fiennes is such a healthy male figure. When in reality, he's also a depressive loner madman who's out in the woods, you know, boiling people. It's beautiful for a story, but that's not a mentally sane man. In an insane world, he fits in. But like, you know, I'm not going to say that Ray Fiennes is like the perfect guy. Like all these characters are human and they're expressing it in different ways. And Aaron Taylor Johnson's father figure expressing things to the Kyles here. The punch he made to the roof there was so real. Like I swear, like as far as when I don't know if you've ever been so pissed off you punched a hole in the wall kind of thing, the double tap and just cracking the drywall is so much more real than when you see like Love the Way You Lie with Eminem and he punches a big hole in the drywall and it's like holding on it being, that's next time it's your face, you know what I mean? Like this was so much more real, and they never made beats that felt like exaggerated. There was that like that quick blow off and he leaves the scene, and that's just enough to traumatize us, the audience, and the kid. And like you said, it felt like a huge betrayal. Like I was right there with the kid. And I think, yeah, they really understood that beat really well. If he punched a hole in the wall and gave him a glaze and then, or like a look, a glance, and then he walked off, I would be like, that was corny. But he did the double tap and walked out. And I'm like, that was real. That was real emotion in that scene. That was a really good choice to double tap that bulkhead or whatever. Anyways, that's all my thoughts on the movie. Let's take it away.
I don't
Somebody
know.
else.
Did you have anything on that, Adriana, that you wanted to touch on?
Well, there's a lot there that you both touched on. But I think you both put it very well. I want to go back to the iPhone thing just because, like,
The shot on iPhone thing?
well, both. Like, just the weirdness of the visuals. Like, I guess plebs would see and be like, "Oh, that was weird." Not to insult.
No, all
No,
the clips I
I'll
saw it
straight
with,
up
bothered
insult-
me. Yeah.
Let me tee that up for you because I think why that is so compelling to me is, again, it feels so different in this sea of just like, because we watch so much and movies today feel so similar.
Yeah.
I think that's why like movies need to do stuff more like this, because it's so depressing to me that we're hitting a point in the kind of cultural zeitgeist where you see something like this and go, I don't know, it was like, because it's not like it's not experimental or or to the degree of like something like Skinamarink, that I thought like the wall of accessibility is very high. Like this is still, things are clear, like you can see things, it's stylized, but like it's very dynamic, but it's not like crazy out there. That, and it just disappoints me that we are there, but when people are like, because it doesn't look flat and gray and completely blown out in lighting, people are like, why does this look off? And it's not like it's just like, that's kind of where we're at with it. But like, if anything, it's like, that's a sign to me, like, do more of this, because we got to shake out of that kind of mentality, because it's so much better outside of that.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I feel like Danny Boyle is just like so good at what he does, and it felt very distinct to him. Like, I love when a director, whatever, like, you can tell it's one of their movies just by looking at it. I think there's like a handful of people who have that. And just to go back to your point about the cohesion between the first one, this one, like, the, being shot on like, the first one was shot on like a camcorder, right?
It was a Canon camcorder, yeah.
Yeah, very lo-fi, and similar sort of lineage here with the iPhones. Yeah, kind of funny, like, strapping these massive rigs and lenses to an iPhone, but I'm sure you both have seen the rig of like 10 or whatever, 15 iPhones to capture the kill shots.
Yeah,
That, like, those shots specifically, like, I was losing my mind in the theater. Like, I was like eating it up. It was so good and effective. Like, just the stuttery frame rate, like, I don't know, 360-degree blood spatter, like, very, very cool. And you just don't see that kind of creativity too often these days, so that's what makes it stand out even more.
I definitely want to like, again, this whole podcast, I definitely want to agree with you more on that point. The cohesion, again, like, if you watch the first movie and your sense of like heightened anxiety for what to expect in this franchise, I was, the first movie, one of the father in that movie, that with the daughter, they're traveling to find safety, they find the military base and it's kind of abandoned. A crow pecking a corpse with the rage virus drops a single drop of blood and it hits him in the eye, and he's done. It's like, he's now infected. He's like, get the fuck away from me. It's a really intense scene, and it comes out of nowhere. No one was safe, and like, it's a viral infection and not like some voodoo zombie stuff. So this movie, again, I think it picks up with that heightened anxiety. If you've seen the first movie and if you're a fan, every time you see blood on screen, you're like, don't touch it. Don't even it's a biohazard. It's a real biohazard. Please respect the biohazardness. And the scene where there's a crow pecking the dead body in that building, I swear they had a shot that like just snaps second and you see blood splatter past like the guy's face. And later when the arrow shoots and like she gets like a blood splatter across his forehead, and she's like, oh my daisies or whatever. And her son's like, don't wipe your forehead. Just don't touch that. Like, especially over, I hate to say it, after COVID, I feel like a zombie movie that gives you that heightened level of like germophobia again, because it's a corpse on the side of the road. If you hit it with your car and your windshield wipers are on, you could get the rage virus. Like, I think they do a pretty good job at dialing in that fear. And again, like you said, the iPhone and that snap editing and the editing in general, there's so many little close-ups that are a frame and a half, and you're just like, Jesus Christ, don't touch that blood, or oh my God, that is an infected piece of glass that on the window, don't touch that. Like, it's a nail biter. I was so tense the entire time, and like, I almost didn't need that scene where the boomer ground crawling zombie, I say boomer like Left 4 Dead, not like the generations holding onto all their housing. The boomer zombie that's crawling on the ground when the kid's taking watch and falling asleep, and his mother snaps out of her psychosis to take care of him or whatever. Like I almost didn't need that. There's so many other scenes where they were like very intense and very like well edited that it was hard to breathe. I was like just waiting to unclench my fist. And again, that opening, one of my favorite parts, I guess, is that opening run when the Alpha chases them on the causeway. I was like, Aaron Taylor Johnson's dying, and this kid's learning a lesson. He's learning a lesson right damn now, because that's how the rest of the franchise seems to work. Oh, you have a sense of innocence? Time to learn a lesson, kid. You know what I mean? Like, even, yeah. So anyways, yeah, I just want to say, like, I thoroughly enjoyed it. And it hit all the horror beats. I guess we were talking about expectations. It hit all the beats I really wanted. Consistently throughout, but especially that first 35 minutes. And then when it opened itself up to be like a movie about general like love and loss and acceptance and stuff, it was like, oh wow, it's really beautiful. I didn't need that, but I'm glad it was there. You know, so yeah, the editing elevates it a lot.
Yeah. I love Chekhov's Causeway. That was very good.
I'm glad you said it. I've been saying every other review, I'm like, oh, Chekhov's, bowling ball or something, so.
Wow, is that a monkey reference, Brandon?
Can I derail super quick?
Go.
Did I already make this joke? We need a days without the monkey mentioned sign.
Yeah.
Flips to 0.
So-
Well, it would just be 0 every time.
Okay, so
Once an episode.
to my credit, it is such a haunting thing in my personal life. And if you ever seen the movie 23 with Jim Carrey, where every number combination in your life adds up to 23, as a middle schooler, that movie was cooking. Like, that
same,
had-
dude. I was in the same.
Yeah.
Do you guys read this shit? Like, I was way into that.
If you
as a
erase
kid.
half of an 8, that's a 2, and it's a 3. So the monkey's my movie 23. Because basically, so I was visiting extended family in Ohio this last weekend, and while there, I was meeting a bunch of relatives, some of them which I'll probably never see again. And they're like, oh, what have you guys been up to? I'm like, oh, we just did a big road trip to Cape Breton, Nova Scotia. Very unrelated. Like, this is super unrelated, and like nuked from orbit is the way I would describe this. I say, yeah. They're like, well, how far is that from where you live in Toronto? And so I said, okay, well, it would be like driving from here. It'd be like driving from Cleveland to like northern Maine. And then the guy goes, oh, that sure is far. Yeah, we have some friends out in Maine. Their neighbor is Stephen King. Oh, yeah. We really love Stephen King. You know where this is going. Really love Stephen King. I like his short stories. And I'm like leaning in. Like the conversation has stopped for me. I've stopped trying to incite it. And he goes, they just made one about it. What was it called? The 8-paw. And I'm like, the monkey? He's like, yeah, I didn't see it, but I like the story as a kid. Not many people know about it. And I was sitting here like, I gotta tell them. I gotta tell them that it found me in rural Ohio. That I like that one movie that's caused us all this gripe. But yeah, anyways, that's my.
I think that's just karma coming around to tell you that your take on the monkeys the wrong one. But no, I think to try and get the train back on the track, I think the one thing you mentioned was you said a loss of innocence. And the interesting thing I thought, and I expect this to be a bigger theme in the next one, and I think is a good transition into the end of the movie, was that loss of innocence. I'd actually argue like if Aaron Taylor Johnson died on that causeway, it would have not.
Yeah.
It's like, I argue it's unnecessary, and like, well, obviously they agree that's why they didn't do it. But like, this is a kid, and what I loved so much is that this beat that you don't really like, what it means. It's pretty obvious what it signifies, but you don't think of the implications really until the end when it becomes much clearer. But in that opening sequence, when he's packing his bags and getting ready, he takes a Power Ranger and he goes to put it in his bag, and then he pulls it back up, and he's like, sorry, buddy, like, and leaves his Power Ranger behind.
You're opening a can of worms with that, by the way. We're coming back to that.
Well, yeah, like, because again, to signify that even though he's only 12, like, the whole purpose of this trip is like, this is your entrance into kind of adulthood in this colony where everybody seemingly goes out. And so then comes the very end of the movie, which does take like a wild right turn and then is over. But is this scene
pretty controversially, I would add. Like, a lot of people are mixed on the ending, which
Yeah,
I
feel
personally
like
was a little
up.
surprised that it was. Yeah, we'll get into it, but yeah, go ahead and finish.
Yeah. Well, it is a sudden sharp turn. So, like, again, like, we hope that everybody has seen the movie that's listening. But Alfie, there's the movie opens as this young child, as the outbreak's happening, a young kid named Jimmy, and throughout the entire movie, we see Jimmy's name in graffiti at one point. It's carved into the torso of the infected that Brandon mentioned earlier, that the was it the Raven or the Crow or whatever was picking.
Yeah.
And so, like, you can see that I looked again more closely on the second time. You don't quite see the J, but it definitely says Immy.
Isn't it? I thought it was J plus M for whatever
no,
reason.
it's Immy. It says Immy is what you can clearly see is Immy.
I said to my girlfriend, I was like, I wonder what the plus M is. M somebody, but I think I just didn't see the I-M.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it was not clear because I'm like, oh, it did say like Immy. That's what I remember. So I made
thought it was
sure to
initials,
look more
like
attentively.
love carving, you know,
yeah,
like
no,
J plus M forever.
Well, I guess he's upside down, but it starts from like kind of his waist, and that's where the J is cut off and hidden. But then it says Immy, and then there's like, I can't remember what the graffiti says, but like the end is nigh Jimmy, and like the Jimmy is like, you can see does not match the same rest of the graffiti. And so this has kind of been teased throughout the whole movie, and then at the very end, this dude who, by the way, I described them without knowing the context, and we'll get into that, as looking Swedish. That was like the bit that I came away, because they all have this long, very blonde hair and like these colorful outfits. And I saw the second time with Steven, and he straight up leaned over before they started fighting, by the way, and went, what are these guys, the Power Rangers? And I fucking started dying, because then, yes, he goes to help Spike, and they start doing flips and all this crazy chicanery.
They have batons.
Yeah,
the
like
baton work
there's
was unwarranted.
like,
yeah,
and they had like the choker thing, like for like reeling in
animal
like
control
stray
and
dogs.
stuff.
Yeah. So they just go to town in this kind of like zany sequence where they beat up and kill a bunch of these zombies. And, the reveal is that it's the Jimmy from the very beginning of the movie. And also, Adriana, just a quick mention, you and I both had this weird bit where he runs into the church and he's like, Father, Father. And you and I both were like, oh, I thought that was his dad.
Yeah.
And then, but like, we were so tired. It was like my third movie or whatever. He says dad in that sequence. On the rewatch, he runs in and says dad. So like, we gaslit ourselves.
Yes.
We gaslit ourselves on that.
Validating, vindicating our initial interpretation. Because
I was
like, no, there must have been like a
ourselves.
reason we thought that beyond just like, because if he had said father, we would have probably assumed it was like he was just.
Well, so 1,000% he says dad.
They all have such thick accents. So when the mom's like, "Go get your father," like, go get your father. Like, you're not sure if he's saying "go get your father" or "go get the father." But yeah, I was gonna say that to you guys too, because you guys on the last episode said that exact bit, and there I was like 5 minutes in, and when he's like, "Father, Father," and the door opens and he sees his father praying, and he goes, "Dad." And then he turns around. So I was like, "Oh, they're wrong." But they're wrong because they were right. You're like, I was so tired. Meanwhile, that was the first thing I like locked in on, because you guys kind of prepped me for that. And I was like, "They're wrong, but they thought they were. They're right, but they thought they were wrong on the last episode." I'm glad you caught it, because then I thought I'd be 2-1.
Psychosis. We gaslit ourselves into thinking it. But yeah, so the sharp turn, crazy zany ending. I'm Jimmy, and basically the movie comes to a close. And honestly, I'll kick this off with my simplistic view. If you really didn't like the ending of this movie, grow up, because it was so it was so fun. But one of the things that, like, functionally, like I said, it feels like a very sharp turn, but it's not unearned. The movie opened on this character. It is definitely and very obvious, at least in 2 other moments, heavily showcased, like that name, that prominence. It is set up that this is going on, and the whole premise of even that zombie that's tied upside down, was like, I'm assuming it wasn't a zombie before they did that, right? Like, so, and the whole bit was like, they have a moment where he's like, oh, there's weird, wild people out here. So the fact that you come across, and again, this I'm sure will be explored in much more detail in the second movie, but this guy never left that Power Ranger at home. He not only brought it with him, he embodies it. They fight like it. They, they don't look like Power Rangers, but they dress in the tracksuit colors.
Very UK.
And the style, and like, these are people that grew up, like they were children when this outbreak happened.
Teletubbies.
And they're 20. Yeah, the Teletubbies, the opening bit, blood on the screen, love that. And then 28 years later, these people have not grown up and are just wreaking havoc and chaos. So I'm really interested, because I think it sets up such an interesting kind of concept between these adults that are children and this child that's gone through so much and, is effectively emotionally at that level an adult.
I think there are probably two reasons why some people dislike the ending, and one is like that it comes out of nowhere and is tonally totally different. This is not what I think. This was sort of the arguments that I've seen, is one that it comes out of nowhere, tonally bizarre, and like doesn't fit and should have just been kept to the next movie, is an argument I've seen. And then the other reason, and this is like a whole can of worms, but I've seen some people take issue with the fact that they are, for context, dressed up as like Jimmy Savile, notoriously
I was gonna say the Jimmy
famous,
Savile stuff.
Child predator in the UK.
Blonde children entertainer in a tracksuit, who was essentially canceled many years later, but in the world
After
where
he
the
died.
UK, after he died, but in a world where the UK ends in 2001 or whatever, those kids with Teletubbies growing up would have loved him.
Never come out.
That would be like running into a gang dressed like Bill Cosby, So
So to that point, I feel like, well, one, I feel like Alex Garland and Danny Boyle are smart enough to not do this without reason. Like, I think people are not kind of giving them enough credit. It's like I've seen people say, like, this is insensitive, but one, it's, you can use someone's likeness and not endorse what they did. Like, there's a very particular reason, I think, that they chose him to be the model that Jack O'Connell's character and his group of whatever they are like using him. And it has to do with this idea that we've kind of been hitting on over and over, that crops up in the movie, of like, lost innocence, but also something really interesting that Alex Garland said in an interview, this idea of like nostalgia and like like misremembering the past and using it to certain ends in the present, like the way that we look back on and engage with things that are like forgotten or lost or in the past, and in our minds reconstitute them for the present in ways that like aren't true to how they actually were. And I think this movie, and probably the movies to come, are very heavily interested in that idea of like nostalgia and going back to a past that is kind of lost to us after, the end of the world, post-virus kind of thing. So I'm very, very intrigued to see where they take it. I think they set that up so well. I don't think it's like, it is abrupt and comes kind of out of nowhere and is tonally off the wall, but it totally worked for me. I was so excited. I was like, what the fuck is happening? And give me more.
To that point, there's a few points I want to touch on, and one's really brief. The Power Ranger action figure, according to Reddit, is actually a 2007 release, so it's highly unlikely that they would have that on the island before.
Chronically online.
No, but sorry, I was trying to get that bit in like a little while ago, but I'm like, that's so irrelevant. I don't want to interrupt with that. But no, the ending though, I think like the better conversation, because I think you guys are both on the same page. Like, grow up, it's fun, it's interesting. But I do want to point out another really good movie this year, Sinners. Had an opportunity to do the same thing which is just shoehorn in a very different vibe at the end of the movie, and they put it in the credits. They MCU'd us, and I think is the most tasteful way to do that. I think the best argument I've read online, chronically as I am, was that maybe they should have started the credits after he's like, "I'm gone, Dad. I'm hitting the road," and then the credits are rolling, and then we do like a mid credits or like a very quick 5 lines of credits like directed by starring, and then we hit a reopening of him cooking that fish, and then we do the big Jimmy reveal then, just to kind of close the movie out on the note that they set up, and just give us a little bit more breathing room.
But that's really hand holding though. Like I feel like you get the narrative, like this movie is done and it feels done basically as that movie goes. And for me, it very much felt like from the moment he's cooking that fish effectively that we're in an epilogue. So yeah. Like where I feel like Sinners felt more disjointed to me at the end because it felt like 2 endings. Like the whole barn sequence at the very end does not or as organically sort of fit to me. It just feels like this and then that whole credit sequence. So
also,
I feel like this one just kind of had that flow.
You know, there are like a bunch of people who walked out of Sinners once the credits started rolling and missed like one of the most impactful bits of the whole thing. So
literally leveled that movie up for me. And
yeah,
you walk out and miss that. Yeah, it's crazy.
Well, that was my thing too with Sinners was I think that credits ending like ties up a lot of loose threads, and it's poetic, right? Where the couple who couldn't exist during like Jim Crow era are now an interracial couple in the 90s. So even though they're soulless vampires, they still get to have eternal love, which I think is beautiful, even if like a little bit macabre. But with this movie, I did have that thought because my second viewing of Sinners, there was a guy in the front row that said, "Don't leave, there's another ending." And I was like, not all heroes wear capes. Because at the 70 mil IMAX I saw him the first time around on opening weekend, not a soul left because they were still standing applauding, and then they all went and they all sat back down. But then like the Tuesday night cheap seat like normal screening a month later, that was the guys like, "Don't leave, there's another ending," and then a few people clapped because they were also in that boat.
My hot take on that is that if you get up to leave as soon as the credits roll, you deserve to miss the ending. Like,
of course, yeah.
So,
even if you have to pee, I know it's not me personally, but some people really love to drink.
Some people have no bladder control.
Okay, but yeah, so anyways, that's my only like counter argument was like I agree with you guys largely, but I do think that there's a world where I may have kind of appreciated that little pause because it does feel like they do whiplash you just a little bit. And on that note, talking the ending and the tonal whiplash, 28 years later, it was spoiled for me from the internet culture. Again, like me being terminally online is becoming a huge bit here. But the first meme I saw while avoiding all formal reviews was I opened Instagram. And because of our feed being so letterbox heavy, it was like this meme of like, "Yo, bro, literally, what the fuck? The ending of 28 years later was literally this." And then that was the caption over footage of Power Rangers doing like "I'm the Blue Ranger, I'm the Red Ranger." And then it was like, and I was like, without context, it doesn't spoil it, but I was like, that's really odd. So I kept, and then the first 5 minutes of the movie, when he puts the Power Ranger away, I got so angry. I was like, they better not actually show up. Like, no fucking way. Power Rangers exist in the world that, you know what I mean? Like, so when it turned out the way it did, I was like, okay, it's not literally the Red Ranger morphing, on screen. Like, thank God. The other thing that was spoiled, and I know this is my thing from episode 1, and now episode 1 of the rebrand here. If you remember, I talked about Count Orlok in his magnificence on screen. The Count Orcock, if you will. The internet spoiled how much dong would be hung in this movie, and how they had like probably
spoiled.
Yeah, there was over 200 prosthetic dongs made for this movie, and they even I think they messed with the trailers to not show so much dong because if you were to like do a side by side, there's dong in all the running shots. Anyways, lots of dong, and the ending was spoiled on this movie for me out of context. So I did love seeing it. Expecting it a lot. Like it was like I wasn't expecting a narrative shift or anything. I was just expecting Power Rangers somehow and a lot of full frontal nudity for men. And it delivered very, very much. And it's realistic. Why would the zombies still have pants? Like why would it make sense? 28 years of living as feral creatures in the woods. Some of them devolved into, the boomer ground crawling ones I talked about. I love that. I like the induction of the alpha a little bit. Like I was kind of thinking this movie was going to. Oh, sorry, I got a 180. earlier when you talked about like the loss of innocence being a big thing and like thematically how are they going to grow the franchise, when rewatching the franchise, I was super concerned that I should straighten my hat out for how serious this take is. I was super concerned that when you watch the first movie, the opening 5 minutes sets up the rage virus. It shows them testing monkeys with chemicals to make them react and become enraged, and it shows them watching news footage of protests and wars. And I was like, okay. And then when these activists break in and they're like, "What are you doing here?" You know, and he exposits, "We're trying to find a cure." And they're like, "For what?" "For rage," and it's outrage. And I think the way that they're describing and the origin of the rage virus is that they had to make essentially synthesized outrage. They had to synthesize a chemical to make somebody violently outraged so they could find a cure to outrage. And it just happened to be a chemical compound that would turn into the rage virus. So, you know, it's like they were essentially making like something they could test a cure to outrage on. I thought this movie, revisiting it in the current political landscape in a post-COVID world, was going to revisit this and turn it into a satire about division and political polarization. I was very concerned. That's why I straightened out my hat here. You know, I was very concerned this is going to turn into like a very heavy-handed, you know, machine, a vehicle to talk about how everyone's divided. And I thought they were going to linger on social media and have a bunch of, you know, the outside world continue, but they're all fucked, mate. They're all extremists. You know what I mean? Like I thought this was going to become a very politically charged movie for no reason other than I saw that opening one more time and I was like, oh, they're rage baiting monkeys and they're essentially increasing their stress levels and their hormones or whatever. So I really was worried that this movie, you know, why reboot a franchise 28 years later, was it to be more topical to our current social commentary. And I'm beyond thrilled they went with like the cancerous dead mom to avoid that, because I thought I was going to end up, because I was excited for this movie. I thought I'd end up hating it. That's because that's how you've taught me, Shay. That I thought, you know, I'm going to end up hating this because I like it so much. And yeah, again, but that was my only expectation, that I was like concerned would be real, because I rewatching it, they almost do kind of preface it like they were trying to find an imaginary cure to human outrage, and it created the initial virus, the rage virus, something that induced widespread rage and you know.
Well, I think it's a double whammy, actually, because one, the whole zombie apocalypse arc of we need to get a cure, like, while it makes total sense in the world of that, and you would want that, that's been played to death like 1,000 times, and they like set up again whatever the deal is with that baby, that, you know, they can run down that road if they want to. But what I think is really interesting about this movie and the commentary I was reading in after it is like a lot of people talking about like how British this movie actually is. Like, again, that like not even just the like Jimmy Savile reference, but I've read a lot of people talking about like the idea of Brexit and like this isolationism and
the
like these
optimism
kinds of
before and
themes.
after,
Like, well, like, but like these things you're kind of talking about, and this is the kind of like political tack that I like, is that I didn't take in any of that as a Canadian. I'm not British. So, like, I didn't take in any of these Britishisms on my first watch. But then when like, that to me, though, is the kind of a sign of a really brilliantly written movie, is that you can get the full experience. And if you want and are aware and can scratch that surface, there's a little bit more for you. But it's not necessary to get a full experience from this movie. And, you know, like, well like, I mean, frankly, it sets up a lot. Like, this movie, you had mentioned earlier the scale. Like, the scale of this is tremendously small, in the sense that, like, you're on a very isolated island and then you're in the woods, basically. And so, like, which, like, it doesn't give you this kind of overall world. Like, again, you get that little dose of the outside world with the inclusion of Eric's character. But, like, by and large, like, we're in effectively one area the whole time. And so, you know, the possibilities in that are there. I think, like, I'm intrigued, like, with all of that stuff. And honestly, like, anyone that, like, there was, like, I've seen similar kind of things about, like, just the fact that, like, Jimmy Savile's inclusion is like an automatic, like, oh no, it's a negative thing. Like, that's what I mean. Like, grow up.
Yeah.
Like, frankly, seriously, if you don't find that concept fascinating, like the moment I realized that's who that was, and then it's like, oh my God, because they're in a world where this was never exposed. And it sets up such a brilliant device to explore that nostalgia and this kind of like, that's going to be
Commentary on that, yeah.
right, and that's going to be a commentary that only we, the audience, know.
Yeah.
Because
which
none of
elevates
these
it.
characters in the world will know about this. And so, like, it's like as soon as I realized that's what it was, I thought that was a brilliant decision. And if you really can only engage with things on such a surface level, whoever you read, grow up. Because that, like, it's such a pathetic way to look at anything, and if you do that, you can never engage meaningfully with real
With, like,
serious
anything.
topics.
Yeah.
it's ridiculous.
Yeah,
It's-
like I didn't
it's-
like Sinners because it talks about slavery, and that's bad. So I just turned it off. I'm not gonna watch
exactly.
that
Like,
movie
it's
again.
it's basically the same argument, which is stupid. And
Yeah.
so it's like, again, okay, you didn't want to see it, like, grow up. You know, like, grow up, don't watch the movie if that's not your feeling, but it's like, oh my God, I hate that. Grow up. That's
Yeah.
my
We
closing
also
bit on
haven't
that.
seen the payoff to that, so you can't judge it yet. Like, you don't know
Yeah,
where they're gonna go with it, because it's, they just throw it at you, and then that's the setup for the next movie. So, like,
Yeah,
Yeah,
like,
they don't
chances
hold your
are
hand.
that Alex Garland isn't, like, a huge fan and didn't realize,
Yeah,
hasn't read
no.
a newspaper in the last 15 years to know what happened. Like, obviously it's a, decision, a, like, conscious decision. And again, like, even with the most surface level understanding of the character, like, to me, if you know who that is, it immediately becomes clear why that's there. Like you said, they didn't pay it off, but they're going to, and it's like, oh my God, like, it just would make such perfect sense. But again, even without that context, and, like, again, I'm like, who the fuck are these Swedish Power Ranger guys? Like, I didn't know, but I still really enjoyed the bit. It was such a fun high note to kind of end that movie on. And then, like, yeah, all the added context afterwards for me just made me so much more interested to see the
Jack
next one.
O'Connell is having a really good year for, like, playing horror movie villains. Like, I don't know. I love that guy.
He's the
I'm
same
glad
guy
he's
from
having a
Sinners,
moment.
Brandon, if you didn't remember that. He's the main Irish. I didn't know that. She's like, he's having a big year. I'm like, what else was he in?
and
I was
Jack
like,
Nicholson's
it's in
sons in
Sinners.
Smile too. That's crazy.
I didn't even realize that.
Yeah, no, I knew that. Again, the internet has spoiled so much of this for me. I hate seeing a TikTok type video where it's someone's face superimposed over the movie poster, and they go, "Bro, Jack O'Connell at the end," and they show an immediate screenshot of him as Jimmy, and I'm like, okay. To be fair, okay, I want to actually touch on this. Because I want to, I can't let arguments go. And even though I was very agreeing with you guys, let's just keep fighting about one thing. Do you know the main character's name from the first movie, Cillian Murphy? Do you know his name? Give
Is
you
it
a hint.
Jim?
You've said it. Yeah, you've said it 50 fucking times. It's Jim or Jimmy when he gets his parents' suicide note because they killed themselves. This is going to be monetized. I can't clip this at all. But he gets some suicide notes. It says, like, never wake up, Jimmy. Like, so, because I just watched the movie, Cillian Murphy's name is Jim or Jimmy. And so every time I saw Jimmy in this movie, and I had heard, again, online spoilers of being like, he's in the movie. He's very briefly in the movie. He's not that zombie you see in the trailer, even though he's very gaunt looking. He's in it in some capacity, which I can only assume was the hands around the girl. There's so much we didn't dive into here, but I kept thinking Jimmy was Jim, the courier. Also, the NATO agent. I don't know if you guys clocked this. My friend smarter than me came out and said this. I'm like, I'm stealing this for my podcast. The NATO agent who's like, yeah, I thought I'd join the Coast Guard and make something of my life. My friend from Europe, before the outbreak, or like whatever, he's like, my friend he became a courier, but he's doing way better than me right now. I think that was a reference to Cillian Murphy, and not him directly, but just like a courier who's delivering packages on tiny streets in Europe, probably doing better than the guy who's stranded on the island. And I don't know. I thought that was maybe a connection or a callback. They did fan service pretty well in this because there was hardly any. I thought,
I was gonna
feel
say
like,
that's yeah.
I
Yeah,
feel
like,
like they sprinkled shit in, but it was you like I was looking for it, and even Renata was like I after watching 2 movies back to back to go in prepared, there really wasn't any like fan serviceable like remember that, and the best one we could pull was maybe when the guy said, "Oh, I was gonna be a Coast Guard, but my mate's a courier, a package courier." And you know, and you're like, oh, okay, you know. So
Yeah.
I don't know if that was the
he's a
connection, but
I did
delivery
not-
driver.
I did not
I thought
rewatch either of the first 2 before seeing this, so it probably
fake
would have
fan.
been
No.
would have
I'm
been
kidding.
lost on me anyway. But from what I can recall of 28 weeks later, I'm very amused by how this one seemingly just like skips over, pretends that one never happened.
Oh yeah,
It's
28 years is like K-hold. It's the
Yeah.
sorry, 28 weeks is K-hold from
Yeah.
the timeline. Like they retconned. I think it was like Paris getting like nuked or something at the end of it, and
Well, yeah,
obviously
something like that. Yeah.
my girlfriend and I were arguing about this too because like the kid at the end gets to a helicopter, and he's a carrier. So if he sneezed on a guy who didn't know he was infected, that could have crashed the helicopter. Because she was kind of like, oh, maybe like I wish they kind of touched on that. Like they had a cure 20 years ago, right? And I, like you guys, was like, no, I love how ambiguous it was. I love that they just skipped over it. Who's to say, yeah, that kid didn't sneeze on one of the guys in the helicopter, and then they just went apeshit and crashed in a building, and that's it. Like
Well,
there was
and
no
also
definitive endings.
it wasn't their movie either, right? Like it
Yeah.
was
Yeah,
some like I
Separate
don't even know.
continuation.
Like I read the name of the director. I was like, never heard of this guy. I don't think in my life.
Yeah.
So, I didn't watch it at all. Actually, like I didn't read anything that's like, oh, you can skip the second one. I just was like, I looked at it. I'm like, Jeremy Renner. 2007 director
Yeah.
I never heard of. I'm gonna make
He's
a
so
judgment
forgettable.
call, and I'm just not gonna watch it. And then I talked to Sam, who had watched both, and was like, "Dude, the second one's so bad." I'm like, "Yeah, it did kind of look terrible, actually." So it's not rated poorly, but I feel like in contrast, I did watch a bunch of stuff about it afterwards. In contrast, even visually to the first one and this one, like it's the
Yeah.
most generic, like Hollywood sequelitis version, and some of the narrative, like I'm not even gonna get into that because like I was like, oh, I just everything I heard and saw about that movie, I was like, I'm so glad I skipped it because yeah, you don't need it, and literally to be like at the very beginning, like Europe managed to push back the virus and we've just made the UK a quarantine zone. I thought was like amusing and a funny way to deal with that and kind of like justify kind of the time going. The only part of that I find unrealistic is that they didn't just nuke the UK at some point. I feel like that definitely would have happened
world
before.
would
We're
have
like,
been
we're going to
better
box it in. Yeah, they're nuking the UK. I don't think that.
Pay
but
thousands of
nitpick.
Coast Guards to patrol the coastline, you know, to
Yeah.
shoot swimmers, I guess.
Just in
Like,
case, like, because
just
we're
in case.
as a world, we're very risk averse, so we definitely would let a whole, country, with a violent, outbreak of violence.
I want to see a
just sit
rom-com
there unattended.
that's called 28 years before or 28 days before, and it's a family or a single father because he's on a work trip in the US of A away from Britain, and then the virus outbreak happens and he's got to restart his life as a refugee, and it's just a straightforward rom-com where just in the background it's just very background that it's just like, oh yeah, the rage virus has decimated another town in you know what I mean, and it's just it's just corny. Just let's have some fun with it. No, I'm
I
kidding,
thought
but,
you were gonna say as soon as you said that, do a 28 Days Before rom-com, except he's the guy that hits Cillian Murphy and the bike, and then the movie ends.
he's
That's
like
a
he's a
perfect
driver.
prequel.
I'm late for my flight. Here's
Yeah, and
20
he runs
quid.
over a
Hit the pedal,
cyclist.
and he hits the cyclist. Like keep going, and that's the start of the movie. Big
Yeah,
fan
exactly.
service. But
No,
no,
I want to get one last line in here because then that's my closer. Is we've talked about his character, but I wanted to make sure we mentioned Alfie Williams, the guy that plays Spike, the main character in this movie. Whew, like that is definitely without question one of my favorite performances of the year. It is crazy. This is like his first reel. Like he did some minor things like a play or whatever, but first like real acting thing, and like I feel like a lot of the time we're like, it's pretty good for a child performance. Like this kid nailed it. Like and like I'm not even gonna give it the caveat of it was a good child performance. It was a great performance. And
isn't he like 26 in real life?
He's literally 14 now.
Okay, I was like, how old? Is this
He
kid
was
real
like
life?
12 when they filmed it, or whatever.
Oh my
12,
god! Wow, that's a
13,
good chat.
yeah.
I was like, oh, I even said, I was like, I bet this guy's like
What
18
do
with a
you
hormone
think
disease
he-
or something. I don't know.
No, he
No,
looks
dude,
like
he's-
a kid.
Yeah. Well, no, I
He's-
mean like there's no way there's a kid that's this good. Usually it's like again like an adult
yeah.
with some sort of hormonal disease.
Yeah.
And like you're going to be
What
a
was-
great kid actor.
It was Dear
Yeah.
Evan Hansen. He's
Yeah.
actually 45
Yeah.
years old.
Yeah,
playing a
yeah. Well,
12-year-old.
no, hats off to that kid. Yeah, because
No,
I
like,
genuinely was
hey-
like, I bet this guy's 16, but just like looks like a kid. But
No,
that's
he was like 12
incredible.
or 13 when they filmed it. He's like
Wow.
14
he
or something
was
right
very,
now.
very good. Very like I was
Ph-
super impressed with
phenomenal.
him. All of the performances, I think,
Yeah.
are amazing. Jodie Comer, fantastic. Ray
Mhm.
Fiennes comes in with like his 10 minutes of screen time and just steals the movie.
So worried that he was gonna get dinged at the end of that. I was so like when
Yeah.
the alpha comes back at them and breaks in and grabs him, I'm like, no! Like I was so stressed by that. I was like, please
He
leave
is-
him alone.
He's on the cast
Also-
list for the next movie, so he will be
Yeah.
back.
Well, it's literally called Bone Temple, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah,
he's gotta
I had
be at
that
least
thought,
in for a
too.
bit.
Because like he asked him what's this, and he's like, I'm glad you asked, and he's like, it's the Memento Mori, and the sequel's called Bone Temple, and I was like, that's way cooler than Memento Mori. Throw your philosophical ramblings out the window, dude. Like call it the Bone
Well,
Temple.
he
off the
doesn't
hop.
call. You've done
He
this twice. He doesn't call it
The Bone
Memento
Temple, sorry.
Mori. Yeah,
No,
it's
he-
like
he
it's,
just
the
says
no,
Memento
it-
Mori.
No,
He
no, no.
says
It's
it is a memento mori. It's a
yes, exactly. It is not like it's like a gravestone, effectively.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, and that's just like what's carved into it. But that's what he means for it. But
No, yeah, I know you said you want to do your closer, and that was a really good way to end it, but I don't want to end it that way. Do you think the alphas are the only ones laying pipe and the only ones able to knock up like zombies? Because I want to know more of the lore. What are your theories? Do you guys have theories?
I think she was pregnant and then she got infected.
this is that's what I interpreted it as
Yeah.
the first
I don't
time.
think
The
they're out
second
here
time I
fucking and
became less
having-
convinced. I'm less convinced of that after my second
No,
watch.
because the alpha shows up and he finds what I assumed was his.
He picks her up.
He picks her up and he's upset and he comes back. So Ray Fiennes says he's never attacked in his bone temple, basically. And when he comes back and he finds him in the bunker and rips him out, I think it's like an alpha wolf dad zombie thing where he's like he can find his baby. That's his baby. I wonder because these aren't dead people; they are
Yeah.
just infected real humans.
Well,
and
now I'm not
I-
so sure. I need
Yeah,
to
no,
watch
like
it
straight
again.
up, Adriana, you
I
and
need to
I
watch
had
it
the
again.
same. I just assumed she was a pregnant woman that got
Yeah.
turned, like,
Yeah,
and then
she-
on a second watch, I felt more confident. I'm like,
That-
are they
you know what,
banging?
that would
it would
also-
explain why they showed so much dick the whole movie to make
It-
us be like, these things are banging, dude.
It would also explain one of the kind of vague sort of logistical questions I had was if it's been 28 years and Britain's been quarantined, why would there still be so many infected, right?
Why would there be a young mother walking into
Well,
the woods
we
getting
don't
infected?
know.
You know what I'm saying? It's more likely she got piped. Secondly, start of the movie does
Well, no,
show.
but that's what I'm saying. Like, if they're reproducing, then
It makes
would
sense,
make
yeah.
sense.
Well, especially because like there's those boomer zombies that crawl. That's like that, in my mind, those are very obese, like American Rascal Scooter type zombies that got the virus, and because they just are unable to move their own bodies, now they crawl and eat worms.
There's an actual
See,
answer to this. I saw an interview with Garland where he said like that was the whole evolution of those like bloater things or whatever, but also the same thing with the alphas is like, okay, like let's think in 28 years like what would have happened, and so like hunting in packs and the establishment of an alpha, okay, and then these bloater things being like they didn't like aren't able as easily to find food, so then they just become crawlers and eat bugs and whatever kind of like nutrients and stuff that they can get through that way. So that was kind of like the just thinking of an evolution of all that. So that was really how that kind of came be. But there was even a child
There's a child bloater. Yeah, that's what
at that beginning that Aaron Taylor Johnson does not shoot, and so
he
like
hesitates. It's a big beat.
it made me flip on that second watch where I'm like, oh, like I think this dude was definitely reproducing
so
and
with-
is tweaking out.
With the new movie coming out in less than 28 weeks later, me, the dong guy, I guess, I just want to say that between the three of us, my initial take was that the zombies were procreating, and if they confirm that, in the next movie, I just want to say I was the first to have that thought. I'm very petty. I need to say that the
You're the
dongs were
first
important.
person in the whole world to have a
Yeah.
thought, Brandon. We'll get you a T-shirt made and everything.
Because you think the humans were enjoying their time and like, no, I'm kidding. But anyways, yeah, I just wanted to have that last little bit. But yeah, great performances all around, and excellent cinematography, excellent editing, good additions to the lore, like the iodine thing. How does Ray Fiennes have gallons of iodine 28 years after the world's ended? I don't care. You guys probably don't either. But yeah, he's
No.
got it enough to bathe himself in it regularly, to the point where he washes his hands and then he has to, or washes the skull and has to reapply the iodine after. Because it, and again, the alpha.
Well,
is not
does that shit
attacking...
come off easy, dude? I feel like you just start coating yourself with that over the course of 28
True.
years. Dude, that you're just gonna be perma-stained at some point.
That's true. And again, I do think the alpha evolution coming for the baby at the end in the crawl space was 100% because he's like linked to the baby in like a weird animalistic way because it's his. Because again, Ray Fiennes explicitly says they don't really come here. It's hard for them to get here. And secondly, he's kind of like invisible, very much like Arnold Schwarzenegger in Predator, where he coats himself in mud by being coated in the iodine. The virus doesn't see that as a viable way to spread or eat. So I really think the alpha coming at the end was the way of saying like that was the alpha's baby. That's like the apex zombie baby. So anyways, hot opinions, hot takes for the
We'll be
sequel.
talking about whether Brandon's right and gets a T-shirt with that on it in January. I think 2026 is when it comes out. So
Yeah, big January
I'm very
release.
excited for that. Yeah,
Yeah.
which normally I'd be nervous for, but I feel like that's hopefully a good sign because like I said, I adored this. I liked it a lot better than I thought I would. If you haven't already seen it, definitely get out there and see it. It is definitely worth your time.
Agreed.
All right.
Yeah,
Well,
me too,
on that
agree.
exciting note, guys, if you do happen to go to the theater and you're looking for a way to get home, please, for the love of God, don't search for an Uber in the middle of a movie. Thanks, guys.